So we've got AJ Croce on the phone. How are you, AJ?
I'm doing great, Kat. Thanks.
Great. I'm so excited to read about this because one of the reasons is, and I don't want to show my age too much, but as a young kid, um, your dad's album was the first album I ever had.
Wow, which one?
It was Don't Mess Around with Jim.
Oh, wow. The
Yeah.
first one.
Yes, absolutely. I had heard Time in a Bottle in a made for TV movie with Desi Arnaz Jr.
Yes.
And I said, I need to have that album. So, yeah, my first album. So AJ, you were a little boy when your dad passed away, right?
I was two.
Okay, and where did you guys live at the time?
Well, we had just moved from the countryside outside of Philadelphia
Ah,
in
okay.
a town called Lindell
Mm-hmm.
to San Diego.
Ah,
And
okay.
my dad was starting to get work out there, and, he lived there all of a month,
Oh, okay.
sadly. Never got to
Wow.
really enjoy it.
So once he passed away, what was your childhood like?
It was crazy.
Oh,
It was really crazy. It was challenging.
mhm.
I had a difficult childhood. After my father passed, there was some crazy people in our lives. I'm saying ours, my mother's and mine, and
Right.
I lost my sight shortly after that
Wow.
due to some difficult situations with a partner that she had.
Mhm.
And so it was very, very challenging. And during that time that I lost my sight, I started playing piano. I was listening to all those great records that my father left behind, and I got a chance to listen to every kind of music: rock and roll and soul and R&B and jazz and blues and country and folk music, classical music. And Ray Charles became my gateway drug.
Wow.
And not knowing I'd end up playing with him, in my
Oh my
early
gosh.
20s.
Oh my gosh.
And so, yeah, it was a challenge. There was, life is a challenge,
Yeah.
I think, for everyone.
Yep.
And it's just part of it. And I think if it's not, then you're not living.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, I was thinking about it, and it's like you aren't known for just being Jim Croce's son. You went out and made your own way. Essentially as a kid, you see so many people, kids of famous people, and their parents are, most of the time they're around and might have given them some sort of leg up, or they're there to push you or to get something, and you didn't have any of that.
Well, not really. I guess the name, which is, which is good and bad.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly I got a couple open doors, but if you can't, keep them open for yourself, then it's not going to work.
Right, right.
I was a piano player before I ever touched the guitar, and from the time I was very young. And so, like I said about Ray Charles, I was listening to that and Stevie Wonder, the stuff that was happening also on the radio at the time, whether it was, Elton John or Rod Stewart or ELO or McCartney or the Stones or whatever it was. But I really got drawn into the old music, R&B and soul music, Otis Redding, Sam Cooke, and then going back further into the rock and roll like Little Richard, and Fats Domino, and then further back to the boogie players of the 40s and jazz players like Ellington and Basie, and then
Wow.
Fats Waller and James P. Johnson. And I became really, really into it. And as a guitar player, just gravitated towards fingerstyle. I think it was in my head, not just from my dad, but from all those great records by, Mississippi John Hurt, Blind Blake, and Sonny Terry and Brownie McGee, and just all of these different things that were kind of in my head, in my ear,
Yeah, yeah.
And so, that was really fortunate, in my opinion, and then I got to start my first session was with a guy named Cowboy Jack Clement, and I didn't know at the time I was filling in for Jerry Lee Lewis, but I walked in and he walked out, and I was 17 years old.
Wow.
And it was pretty heady because, they flew me to Nashville from California. And about a year later, when I was 18, I was heard by B.B. King. He saw me play and liked it and asked if I'd go on the road. And I didn't have a manager or an agent or label or anything like that. But by the time we got from Vancouver to Los Angeles, I had an agent, I had a manager, and shortly after that, I was signed at 19. So
that is amazing.
I started young, and I've been doing it ever since. I had the great opportunity to tour with some of my heroes like Ray Charles and Aretha and James Brown and Neville's and all these great folks, and then had a great chance to work in the studio with all kinds of wonderful people like Ry Cooder and on and on and on.
Wow.
It was music is like any, I think, occupation where you work for yourself is a roller coaster. You have good years and bad years, and you never know which one's coming.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. Now, let's go back for 1 second. I told you what my first record was. What was yours? And now, you can't say your dad.
No, it wasn't. I mean, of course, I listened to, it was on the radio,
Yeah.
I listened to those, and there was other things like Randy Newman that I loved that was, in the house. But the first album I bought was a Talking Heads album in 1977.
Wow.
And it was called 77. And then, but, I was into so many different things and going to thrift stores and picking up old 78s and 45s and everything. Of course, New Orleans music really influenced me.
Yeah.
I had heard it at home with albums by Lee Dorsey and stuff like that, but Alan Toussaint really in particular. I loved Long Hair, and I loved James Booker, and I mentioned Fats Domino, Toots Washington, all these great piano players, Jelly Roll Morton much earlier.
Right.
But Toussaint had something. He was a great songwriter, singer, piano player, producer, arranger, and I heard a track by Irma Thomas in a Jim Jarmusch movie, and sort of fell in love with that sound, and it taught me, by studying that music, it taught me how to arrange the way I wanted to hear the band, the way I wanted to hear it recorded.
Would you say you're self-taught?
Oh yes.
Wow.
I mean, not that I haven't had lessons. I don't see quite well enough to read music, so I have to write it myself. I can read music, but it needs to be large. And so I've always just written my own charts.
Okay. So tell me, this is the 50th anniversary of your dad's album. Why have you decided to go on the road and start doing his stuff? Because that's so different than what you're telling me that you've been influenced by.
Sure. Well, I've worked behind the scenes as a publisher with my dad's stuff for, 25, almost 30 years. And before that, I had 10 years of practice with my own music, and pitching it to film and television and advertising and all that kind of stuff. So I was really happy working behind the scenes to sort of preserve his legacy. It was really important to me, and I felt good about being able to be behind the scenes with it, and then do my own thing, regardless of what that was, because I'm all over the map with genres and styles and different things as a songwriter and player.
Absolutely.
So I think it happened gradually. In my early 30s, I was transferring some of his music to archive it, listening to this old tape, and I heard all of these songs that I had been playing since I was 12, 13 years old.
Oh, wow.
Bessie Smith and Pink Anderson and Fats Waller and on. Almost every song on that tape was something that I had played, and they were obscure songs by relatively obscure artists. Certainly by today's standards, and they were the deep cuts, It
Wow.
wasn't Ain't Misbehavin', or it was You're Not the Only Oyster in the Stew, which was on my first demo for Columbia Records. So
No
it
way.
was a connection.
Wow.
That's really what the show became. I've been asked since I was 15 or 16 if I would cover my dad's stuff. I didn't think there was integrity in it.
Yeah. Good for you.
I felt like I needed to make my own way and do my own thing and acknowledge him for how great he is,
right,
and was, and still do my own thing. But I think hearing those recordings and hearing that we had this deeper musical connection sparked something in my imagination for what might happen down the road.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened, over the years since then, I would throw a song of his in the show. As I learned to, play guitar, I picked up guitar in my 30s. Playing operator or playing something of his that was recognizable just out of the blue, certainly not expected. It wasn't something I would never commit to playing anything of his in my show. And I saw the reaction, and I felt the joy that it brought to the audience, and I thought there was something great in that. It wasn't just nostalgia. There was something I was able to bring to this music that people hadn't seen, and most people had never seen him perform live, so that was another factor.
Oh, I never thought of that. Yeah, you're right.
And, his career was 18 months.
Wow.
So it was a very brief, even though he had played music for 10 or 12 years before, you don't mess around with Jim. His professional career was really 18 months.
Wow.
And so, he was really ready for it when it happened.
Mm-hmm.
But all those songs sort of came out all at once.
Yeah.
The first two albums were pretty much written all in the same time in about 6 months, 8 months.
So what can people expect from your show?
It's his stuff. There's the hits. There's the some of the deeper cuts that I love. There's my music, and then there's the music that connects us, which I've spoken about. It's really the connections that I love to make. I love to tell the stories behind the songs, and then I have a lot of flexibility because I have 30 years of recording and albums to draw from. But
right.
Then there's thousands of songs that we have in common,
mm-hmm.
so the show can really vary from night to night, and I have a lot of freedom to improvise and draw from different places. So it's energetic show, and people are probably doubting it, listening to me sound all laid back here at my place on a rainy day in Nashville. But
yeah.
It really is, and the band is wonderful. It's a really fun band, and we can pivot on an idea, and I can go off the deep end and pull something out of nowhere, and they're with me. There's a little treat at the end of the show.
Oh,
with
fun.
Audio, video,
We are excited because you're going to be in Kalamazoo December 3rd. We have listeners coming to your show, and man, oh man, it was so great to talk to you.
Well, thank you. I look forward to seeing you there, Kat.
Absolutely. Thanks, AJ.
All right.
Gosh.
Well, have a great day.
You too.